Hello, everyone. How you doing? This is really exciting times for us. So I'm just a tall, bald, ugly guy, right? Sitting right here, chit-chatting with two phenomenal educators. I can honestly say that I know their work. I've had the opportunity of working with them on several projects in the work that I do. And tonight, and wherever time you're watching this here through Comic-Con, is we're going to be talking about kind of a smorgasbord of words, but they all really mean the same thing. So you might hear us talk about makerspace or mindset. Where we are in Iowa, where we talk about the universal constructs, but for a lot of you, that's the 4 C's. It's nothing new or anything like that. It's just how our state organizes it. Project-based learning, insert the buzzword wherever you see fit. But really what we're after in our conversation today is around helping students actually truly own their learning, which we all say that's what we try to do, and creating authentic learning experiences, not just for the students, but for the educator as well. So you're going to hear a lot of words, but I just want to start that off before we even introduce ourselves of that's really what we're after, because this is something that we know is important. And we've got two phenomenal people that are actually making it happen through all the trials and tribulations and all the things that the education system puts our way that doesn't always make it easy. So let's start with introductions. Sarah, I'm going to start with you just because you're the first on my left here. And let's just let everybody know who you are, what you do, and just kind of so that we get a sense of who's all going to be sharing some genius insights tonight.
All right. Well, I teach here at Forest Grove with this other awesome educator. I teach 6th grade, but I have experience in kindergarten, 2nd grade, and 3rd grade. So that's about it. That's me.
There it is. Awesome.
That's it.
And then our other amazing person here, we have Beth Campbell. And Beth, who are you and what do you do?
Well, I am the teacher librarian here at Forest Grove, and we opened a brand new school this year. So we got to actually create a learning laboratory. And so I get to co-teach and work with our students K-6. I've also been an innovation tech coach, but I love the learning lab and all the opportunities it brings to work as a team with my awesome educator friends.
Yes, I'm so glad to have you guys part of this. And I am Aaron Maurer. My title is STEM lead. So on the eastern side of Iowa, I support 21 school districts in STEM and computer science and project-based learning. And I have a good working relationship with these two. We've done a couple pretty spectacular global projects, and we've got piloting a new one right now that is going to be maybe the best yet, but we're not there yet. So once it goes live, we'll definitely share. But this is a great opportunity to kind of bring the voices of educators to the light for people to see this. So to get started, we were just talking, or I was talking about the smorgasbord of words and ideas, but if we were to focus on this concept of authentic learning experiences or students owning the learning journey, let's just kind of establish what we mean by that. There's lots of definitions. There's lots of books on these types of things. There's everything under the sun for it. But I always like to think about it like in the reality of teacher terms. What is it that we actually mean by this? Because I think while we all hear it all the time, a lot of times we don't really know what it is because the words we use freely and maybe not truly understand. And I'm not saying that we are the perfect solutions to these definitions, but as we set the stage for our conversation, like what does that mean to you guys when we're thinking about authentic learning experiences and students owning the learning journey?
Sarah, go first.
Oh, goody.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things that I think is really important in talking about ownership is we've talked a lot to our kids about the difference between real work and fake work. So work that really connects the world outside of these 4 walls. And part of that is we talk about ownership, meaning I'm not the authority anymore. Right. And so, design becomes the authority, or ingenuity becomes the authority, or creativity becomes the authority. So it's really taking ourselves as adults out of that equation, I think, and really handing over that decision making and maybe not so much the pace of the situation, but the productivity, pace and productivity to the kids, and letting them wrestle and struggle and just be there to support. I don't know. What would you add to that?
Well, I'm going to add to that. That whole idea, and we do unwrap that with with students. They give us examples of when they've been given fake work. They know when the work doesn't matter. And so we actually start with that conversation. And from there, we talk about opportunities to actually make a difference in the world, what they want to do, their ideas. But I guess at the end of the day, what it shows is that we believe in them. And we have the opportunity to do school different for them. And so when they know we believe in them, when they know we're not just going to lecture at them or deliver content to them, it becomes a different, rich environment. So that whole idea of owning the work and authentic work, it makes a huge transformation in the culture in your classroom.
You know, I want to add on to what you just said too about that what we prioritize with them when we talk about this. You know, our kids grow up in systems where we ask for the right answer, right? We're constantly seeking a right answer. And ownership, when you own your own work, it's really about the process. And so sometimes we overlook that, I think, in our own school systems or within our systems, and that's kind of undoing school to them, right? So I think ownership too is just reprioritizing that a little bit and really prioritizing the process and not the product.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so let's break that down a little bit, because you guys said some key things that I think are really important that I think we need to dive into. Because I would say that the majority of educators, if you were to poll them, they would say that's what they do. Like, and we're not here to judge and say whether you are or not. That's not the point of this. And we're not to say that we're above anyone in this work. But I think there is misconceptions about what we're talking about. And so, Sarah, in the beginning of your answer there, you were talking about moving the learning beyond the classroom walls. It reminds me of a student I had. We had a student voice group many years ago when I was still teaching in middle school. And she called classrooms pastel prisons. Every classroom looked and felt the same. So we started like this campaign of like, what's your wow? Like every room should have its own character. Like me, I love coffee. Kids have called me coffee chug throughout the day. Like so I was always trying to create this like cafe experience. You know, I think about like my wife, she's a teacher, but she loves gardening. Like what if everything was about like gardening? Now she's got gnome gardens everywhere. And like you start to bring in your own personal flavor. So I think there's something there. But where I want to set a little stake in this and talk about that, when we think about going beyond the classroom walls, the first question that always comes up with is, I don't know how to do that. And when people ask what they're looking for is like, you know, we used to have Skype in the classroom, which that doesn't exist anymore, Google field trips or virtual field trips, but I don't think that's actually what they're asking. And this is what I want to pose to you two. Before you even think about the tools or the connections or who to reach out to, what has to happen first to get the classroom ready? I should not say classroom, I'm going to say learning space, because we've got the learning lab in your media center, Beth. So it's not just a classroom, so to speak, ready to actually engage beyond the classroom walls. Like I think so quick, we're like, just give me the tool, find out who I got to email, but we haven't created the culture yet. So can you guys talk about that a little bit? Because I think that's a missing component that gets left out of the conversation time and time again, and not on purpose. It's just rarely addressed. And it popped in my head as you were talking, Sarah.
You know, the first thing that comes to mind, and you mentioned this in the introduction too, is our universal constructs here in Iowa. Just our human centeredness within our system, right? And so I think when we talk about those human skills that we prioritize, probably, I hate to say it, even above our content skills in some capacity, right? I think that sets our groundwork and our foundation for growing outside of these four walls. But we spend a lot of time unwrapping those words and what that really means and what that looks like, because at the end of the day, no one's going to care what you did in sixth grade, but they are going to care if your thinking is fluid, if you're an effective communicator, if you are willing to take ideas and add value to a conversation. So I would say that's where we start to build our base and our foundation
Yeah, I'm going to interject here real quick, because I know, Beth, I can tell you want to share something here, but I just want to clarify, just because we have a potential global audience. So when we say
Right.
universal constructs, I'm just going to say these words of what they are for our state,
Okay.
and I guarantee anybody listening knows these words. So just so we're not speaking from like a local lens, people are like, what are those? We're talking critical thinking, complex communication, creativity, collaboration, flexibility and adaptability, productivity, and accountability. These are words we all know, but just so we're aware of when you're talking about, we prioritize those sometimes over content. I think most people are aware this is what we're all striving for. So I just want to put that in there real quick. Beth, we'll go back to you. I didn't know if you had something you wanted to share. I didn't want to cut you off in mid-sentence. So.
Well, no, I mean, Sarah introduced it very well, but the word she used was conversation. And so we spend a lot of time in conversation, meaningful, deep, rich conversation with our students about this. So actually we go slow to go fast later on. And that rich conversation then combines the head piece with the heart piece. So that's where the student centered, and I care about this and I want to own this because I believe in it. And it matters to me. It matters to me to be a better human being. And so starting with those rich conversations, going slow, I'm not going to prioritize the content to the content, but I have to create a culture in my room that fosters risk-taking, that fosters trust, that fosters care and concern, fosters relationships. And if I don't have that, none of this is it's going to be a thing. And so we don't want it to just be a thing. We want it to be the way we do business with our students.
And when you say thing, this reminds me too, we work really hard because, and you just said it, I'm just going to repeat it, but this work isn't a lesson and one and done, right? It's woven into how we act and behave, how we engage with content every single day. So it isn't a thing that we just teach once. But it is nurtured, it is worked on, it is wrestled with, it is talked about. And not only do we have conversations with our kids, but eventually, slowly, we expect them to start speaking this language too, right? Like, this isn't just our language, this is your language. And so even more important, I think that they're able to match their words with their behaviors and actions when we talk about universal constructs and again, building that ownership.
Yeah. So I want you guys, I'm going to share a quote. And while I'm doing that, I want you guys to think about, let's provide an example of what it is that you guys were just talking about. Because I think, again, we talk about culture and safe space and all these things, but I don't know that it's always there in terms of creating a space that allows for vulnerability to try something new. And probably even more important, not just we're talking physical space, but space and times of the school day or your class period, depending on your grade level, to allow it to happen. And we know there's pressures, and I'm not here to go into that. We could spend forever on the pressures of schedules and curriculum and what you got to be. And I know there's different places there. But as you guys think about it, some examples, so I think it's helpful for educators to hear like what it is that you've done, found to be successful in those ideas. As you guys were talking, it reminds me of this thing from a book, Nomadic Society. And it says like educators need to leapfrog beyond the cult of educational measurement. And the author goes on to say, when we focus on how to learn, not what to learn, learning becomes invisible.
Yeah.
And I think that's really powerful. Kind of speaking to this culture piece that you guys are speaking to here, right? We could sit down every day and give kids packets and we could say, yes, they mastered the standard and blah, 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 blah. But it's the culture piece. So as you guys were talking about that, how have you done that, both as a classroom teacher, in your case, Sarah, and Beth? I think it's really important that we get a media center librarian example too, because the culture you have in your space is phenomenal. It's not just come in, check a book and leave. It's hard we could spend a whole session on explaining all the stuff that goes on in your space. So I think they're two powerful lenses that I think need to be heard.
You go first.
No, you go first.
No, I don't know where to start.
We're just like kids. We're just like kids.
I know,
Yeah.
you do it.
I I'm going to start with one that I think fosters that conversation. We have what we call here a culture of readers.
Ah.
So we've done some branding of ourselves,
Mhm.
and we bring students on with that branding. We talk about branding. So whatever it is in your scenario, you can talk that with kids, and we talk that with younger kids. That's one way to start taking it from the conversation to now a collective care, concern, what our group wants to move forward. So we've done a lot of that with our ELA, with reading, with great books. And then, so we have a culture of readers. So what does that look like? And we've got a lot of branding that we utilize then with Twitter. Our students then take their deep, rich conversations about books, what's touched their lives, what matters to them. They've created podcasts. They create Adobe Spark video creations, Adobe Spark post creations. We put those on a Wakelet wall, which is just a beautiful way to collectively share as it integrates with Google Classroom. We share that with authors, with publishers. So we use all of that then to like brand not only what matters to us, but brand their work. And so it's kind of a progression from, the rich conversation.
Yep.
And moves it in. So that would be one example.
Well, and I was going to talk about that example. So Beth's work is she's so embedded in all of our classrooms. When you think about a learning lab, kids don't come in here and check out books and leave. I mean, she is embedded in the constant work and instruction within all classrooms. So we really aren't a separate piece. We're not two separate pieces here. We're really one unit, but everything Beth just said, I would agree to. So
I would talk a little bit, Sarah, for you on your idea around systems. I know we're doing a project that's evolved around systems, but one of the things that you do really well, and I know it's always so hard as a teacher, you're like, well, this is just what I do. You don't see the power in it. Is like, we're doing this project right now with NASA, and basically the driving question is, what are the ingredients to survive regardless of time, space, and place? PBL is not new, and this kind of stuff is nothing earth-shattering to many people. But Sarah, what you've been able to do is develop a system as an educator in your classroom, interwoven with the media center, and you have found a way to thread a through line with ancient Egypt, the All 13 nonfiction book about the soccer team that was trapped in the tunnels, and now here we are exploring how to live on the moon, which to the average person seems like those are so disconnected. But you do this not just with this particular project, you do it just naturally through your subjects, because you have required minutes of how to teach. You have required things that you have to get done. We can't just completely revolt and deviate from the system. Like, there's things that you have to do, but you found ways to bring this culture, this learning space, and these experience while also being able to do those things. So like, take us through, and I know sometimes we just ebb and flow right along with the kids, but like, in your brain, like, how do you process it? How do you start to bring that to fruition? And maybe you don't even know, it just happens. That happens for a lot of people. But I think that's an important element, because a lot of people getting started, like, yes, I got this, but I have to do my science. So there's this science lesson. Then I have to go do my math block. And then I'm going to try to do PBL. And that feels so separate that you just get exhausted doing it because it's not woven in with everything. So I was just curious on your thoughts or questions or ideas you think through with trying to make that stuff happen.
Well, I think when you speak of through line, and I'm going to give all three of us credit here. This is never something that I do just alone and isolated, so the power of in this building, and the three of us, especially, it is a necessity in doing this kind of work. And so our through line, and you guys, we had how many meetings before this work actually started? And our meetings were, in our first couple, you might say, we're just like, oh my gosh, I guess maybe we won't do this. I don't know. Right. We were stuck. We felt stuck. But painting done for us is really, really important, and what it looks like at the very end. And then when we can do that and we can dial back for whatever reason, then we can really start to connect and create that through line for all things. We also talk in here a lot about not just the power of but we don't do anything in isolation. Like you said, Aaron, oh, it's this time from whatever social studies time from 1 to 2, or reading time from 2 to 3. We really, really try to weave in as much as we can and make that super, super connected for kids. You know, we talk about our brain does a much better job when we can make those connections and kids can see those connections. If we just do, this is our time, this is our time, this is our time, this is our time, our kids don't see that. They don't understand that. And so then the work becomes not as rich, and it becomes not as collaborative, and all the other things you could say to that. But we spend a lot of time starting with that paint done piece first. And I think that then helps us to build and enhance these experiences for kids and enrich our curriculum or our content.
Yeah, I think it's really important that you brought up the idea of not doing things in isolation. We don't think twice about putting kids in groups and saying, figure out your group dynamics and do this group project, figure out how to work together. And we just expect them to automatically pull out the cheat sheet of skills and go, oh, this is how I work with a person. Like, but it's hard to teach that. Like, you have to give them experiences where they have to work through those. And I think what you hit on is important, because collaboration is really hard to come by. There are places that it happens, and in a building, I would venture to say in the average building, there's great partnerships, and then there's a lot of places where it just doesn't happen. Trying to force it isn't always a good answer either. But the one idea that I've been really thinking through this last week as we've been working through our own project with the students is like these 3 words of being co-learners, co-teachers, and co-responsibility. And I see it through 3 lenses, or 2 lenses really. Like, we are the 3 of us as the professionals planning and making sure we're doing what needs to be done. We are co-learners. We are learning probably, I would say some days, way more than the kids.
Yes.
We are co-teaching, all utilizing our strengths when needed, to make sure things continue to flow. And co-responsibility, like, we have complete trust in one another, and we can take on the responsibilities needed that we're best suited for, knowing that it all fits this bigger piece. It's not about any one of us individually. And that second lane then is, these are the things that as we model, the kids are able to see us as well. There are times where we are a co-learner with students when they are learning. There are times when we are a learner while they are co-teaching us something. And that co-responsibility really calls for adults to be brave enough to say, I don't know. Like, I don't know how to do that. And that is so scary, because there is this embedded pressure, either by society or internal, or maybe the culture of a building or district, where we think we can't say, I don't know. And it's hard. It's hard to sit there and go, dude, I have no idea how to do that, but let's figure it out. Let's try to figure it out. Yeah, so there's this stuff that has to happen. And to me, I think one of the things that we had in this project was, we've been trying to be pretty transparent with the kids. Like, here's what we're thinking. And we've had to change ideas several times. And some kids have really, really not liked, but we're trying to let them know that we're in this with them. And like, just like they're struggling with their projects, we're kind of struggling too, as we try to figure out what is the next step, not just going, well, this is what we planned, so good luck. So just an interesting insight there, this kind of like co-ownership of space and learning, and then shifting those roles as students and teachers among ourselves and with our students too. So let's move into another layer of this. And this is what like, how do we get started with this? This is, and what's the starting point? Someone's listening and they're going, yeah, I do this. Yeah. Or I want to figure out how to figure this out. What are first steps? What are maybe some things to look at, or tools, or just mindset? And I know I've been putting you guys on the spot, so I'll throw some ideas out here first. So I'll take a little brunt there for give you a breather. And I was trying to think, mine are more generic, because I think for me, I spend a lot of time on how do we build confidence in the classroom as an educator. If we're not confident to do the work, it's not going to happen no matter what training we go to. Like, we have to be confident enough to say, let's do this. So one of the first things I see when starting to do this type of work as a educator, or a teacher librarian, or an admin giving permission to their staff to do this type of work, is we have to cash in our expert badge. and we have to just resort to being an amateur. We're going to get it wrong. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to own it. We're going to talk with the kids on it. And we know that it's going to be messy. And if you're worried about that, my first thing is like, start small. Make it a 1 to 2 day little sample type project or challenge, whatever, design thinking, whatever you like, and just get in and out of it. So that way, if it tanks miserably, you're not out a lot of time. And I think what happens is kids catch the buzz of it. You catch the buzz of it, and all of a sudden they want more. And then that extends to, oh, let's do a 1 week, and now we are working together for many times. We're now several months into this one, but you don't have to start there. I think there's also that we think we got to go big right away. Like, just where's your point A, where's your point B, and just embrace your own journey. So that's one of my ideas. I've got some others, but I didn't know if you guys have other thoughts. Just learn to get started. I can fill in another one, but I don't want to hog all the air here.
Go for it.
Okay. What you just said, I love, Erin. It's actually freeing.
Yeah.
When you take on that mindset and you park, what was your phrase about
Expert badge.
expert badge? I
Mhm.
love that. When I park that at the door, actually my teaching becomes a little bit more fun and actually a little less stressful
Mhm.
versus more.
Yeah.
Because I've taken some pressure off of myself, and the world that these students are going to live in, they are going to fail. And
Mhm.
so if I model my complete fail, and I'm okay with that, I'm modeling for them life. I love the idea of play. It's okay to play. I don't have to have everything scripted out. And my other thing is find your tribe. If it's
Yeah.
one other person willing to join you, find that one other person that says, yeah, I'm okay with taking a risk.
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
One thing that I think we do really well as a team too is, and you mentioned this, both of you have already mentioned this, but our kids will be working and we're in the middle of this work, and we'll come together and say, okay, this isn't good. Something's not right. So our ability just to like shed what we thought was right, or to shed what we think kids should be doing right now, and to pivot and adjust in the moment. I mean, being in the moment and being present in that mess all the time, I know can feel chaotic, but there is so much to be learned through that mess for both kids and adults. So I think our conscious ability to pivot when we need to pivot is really, really, really powerful for us as learners. And again, for our kids to watch as learners. I mean, I don't know how many times we've called them back to the classroom or in our lab and said, okay, time out. Here's what you were doing, but now we're going to do this. And you mentioned that earlier too, Erin, and they're frustrated for a minute. We're probably a little frustrated too, that it didn't go down the pathway we thought it was going to go down, but we quick turn around and we reset. That's life. And you mentioned that too. That's our world.
Yeah. And I think through that process, even in those moments, it's really hard. It's hard for everybody. Like, now we're getting to the end at the time of this recording of a project, and they're going to be so proud of their work. Like, not because of the letter grade, like, because they actually did the thing that they set out to do, and they never would have got there had they not had to reiterate time and time again. In some groups, I think the one group, they're on their like 4th big idea. It just has, and that's not it's not fun. And anyone that tells you like making mistakes and failure is good, and I mean, yes, it's part of the learning journey, but it's not enjoyable. It's a yucky feeling, and we have to let kids know, yeah, it is yucky. Like, we don't want to come tell you that this is fun. Welcome to learning, but how do we give the space to play within those? And there's because I want to talk a little bit more about the mindset that we've kind of been working through with this project in particular. But one of the quotes that I always use when I'm talking with people about purposeful play or hands-on learning comes from this professor, Marina Bears. I think it's how you say her last name. And she always asks the question, is your space a playground or a playpen? A playpen being, it's isolated. You've created the walls. You control everything. You control what the kid can and cannot do. And obviously, a playpen is important. There might be a time and place for that too, right? There's a time and place that we're going to, like you were talking about, Sarah, we're going to stop. We're going to come together and we're going to have a talk, or we're going to stop and we need to do some direct instruction right now because we see there is a gap. Like, playpen isn't bad, but it can't be your main status of your learning space. And then there's the playground. It's still finite. There are boundaries, but it's open. Like, I could run into the grass and I can use that equipment however I want. And that's why I wanted to bring up, because I know in this particular project, we're talking about authentic learning experiences, how hard that is from the hearts of educators to not, I don't want to say not, but to allow them to play on the equipment the way they want to play, which might be different for how we want to do it while we're kind of standing on the outside. Can you guys talk about that a little bit? Because I think the reality here, I don't want to paint this picture in this webinar or this session that it's just perfect rainbows and sunshine, and there's a lot of great rewards to it, but it's also your mind as an educator is going to get stuck too. You guys want to talk some of that? Because I think that the real talk is powerful for other educators to go, hey, be ready for it because it's coming, but you're not alone in these thoughts and feelings.
Well, you're exactly right. I mean, we've approached you throughout this process, in front of the kids that have said, I'm struggling, right? And it's okay. And you'll talk us through and say, yep, they are too. And we're sticking with it. And here they go. But you're right. We're so used to being in control of our spaces as educators, right? You are the authority. And like I said earlier, this is a total shift in that authority. It is, you are in the back seat as a support, and that's about it. Well, not really, that's about it. There's a lot more to it than that, but
right.
I just think, again, being able, when you're with that co-group or that tribe, as you mentioned, Beth, being able to be vulnerable and say, I don't feel good about this, or this doesn't seem like it's going in the right direction. What do you guys think? And being able to play off of each other like that and talk through those ideas is so important, because we support each other in that too. It's not just supporting kids. Erin, you continue to push us to think differently, and we need support too, because it's so easy to fall back into, this is the plan, this is the time we have to do it. So we're going to do this during this time. And I don't even know if I answered the question, to be really honest. I just started talking. So
no, yeah.
No,
I mean, go ahead, Beth.
Oh, well, no, she did. But I mean, I will be a different teacher after this process.
100%.
And everything you said, I mean, we do have a through line. We've had many planning sessions. We have had direct instruction. I don't ever want to give the impression it was just like a, free for all.
Right.
But I talk too much in my instruction.
Yes.
Sometimes I'm blah, 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 blah,
Me
blah.
too.
And I've learned from you, and I always want to rescue a kid or give a kid the answer, because I don't want them to struggle too much. And I feel that's my job. But what I've noticed from you is just your intentional questioning, listening, recrafting a question, asking them to look at something through a different lens, giving them time, checking in with them. Again, taking me out of being the sage at the stage, on the stage for everything. And so for me, that's been a major instructional shift in my thinking to make that, again, putting the ownership back on students.
And I know it's not ideal for everyone, but if you have those opportunities to kind of do co-teaching, however that can look, it'll look a lot of different ways. I mean, I think the beauty of what's working for us too is when we work with a group, we're all coming at it with a different set of eyes. And it's not that one's better than the other, but we're constantly giving kids another thought process, another angle to look through. Beth, you see it through your world and your experiences of your job and your career of teaching. Same thing with you, Sarah, as well as probably all the things that have happened in your case where you have the kids all day, in your classroom. There's stuff that happens in the morning that I don't know about, that all of a sudden that does change the narrative or the conversation. That has nothing to do with the project, just has stuff to do with the social emotional well-being of the children. So I think that is really powerful in and of itself. And going back to extending beyond the 4 classroom walls, one of the things people always talk about is, okay, well, I don't have a co-teacher. I don't have there are people who will come in and do that. We've been lucky, people come in and been giving us feedback. Sometimes it's we've been fortunate to have some feedback from NASA and some other cool people, but locals want to come in. We've got in our case, we have John Deere headquarters. We got a guy from John Deere coming in to help just come in next week and just look at the engineering lens of their constructions. They're near done, not giving answers, but just kind of looking through and be like, is there anything that could help make it a little bit better, smoother? We've got other local educators coming in and just giving feedback on their speaking. And so as we think about the classroom walls, it doesn't always have to be these big profile names. I think we also put burden on ourselves. When you knock one out and you get it, great, run with it and celebrate it. but your local community is a treasure trove of people that will come in and help if you just, and the beauty of that, some people ask about this, like, well, how do you do it? Like, you have to be very specific. I need you to come in, this guy from John Deere, I'm not asking him to look at presentations. Could he do it? Yeah, it's not his cup of tea. Can you come in? We've got 4 groups that have these motorized coded mechanisms. Can you look at it and just give them some food for thought? Because that's what you do. That's a way different approach than, hey, could you go through and feedback on all these projects that you don't know? So as we be thinking beyond the classroom walls, it's also just don't forget your local space. Like, you don't have to go across the world to find a expert. Like, they're sitting right there. It could be parents as well. You know, a lot of parents have an expertise in a lot of these projects and ideas, and talk about then building, strengthening the community even stronger over your culture of learners or culture of readers. All of a sudden now, you know, Susie's mom's in here and this dad's coming in here and this business is coming in here. Like, now all of a sudden people start to see, in our case, public education doing incredible stuff, because it doesn't always happen in the social media landscape of education. So I know we've got a little bit of time. What are things that we haven't talked about as we think about this ownership of learning, the learning journey, authentic learning experiences, that you guys want to bring out, make sure that gets captured in this as we're talking? Like, what are things that you're just want to make sure gets expressed from your history with other projects or other things that you're like, boom, people got to know this? I think it'd be helpful.
Well, this is really basic, but I do believe in just really, truly listening to students all along the way. Their ideas, they have phenomenal ideas for things they want to try. You know, we have been doing podcasting in our district now for a while. The idea started from a meek little 6th grader in the back of the room that said, I'd like to try podcasting. I didn't know anything about podcasting. And now our podcasts are on iTunes and our students love podcasting. So I think it's really listening to them, listening to their frustrations, what they enjoy, what matters to them, because that does drive a lot of our authentic work is their input and their voice.
I would agree. And what they value in school. And you already said that, what matters to them. Are, you know, again, so many times they're so compliant and they want to please you. And so to undo that a little bit and really to get to their heart and their why, and taking time to have those conversations to really figure them out as humans and what they want throughout this experience is kind of eye-opening. But again, you have to be present in their lives every single day. You have to be willing to question, you know, willing to listen and just take what they say and value that, and adjust from there.
Yeah. And to be prepared for when we create these opportunities that are authentic, they're going to respond authentically, which means in a class of 25, you're going to have 25 different responses to various challenges in the learning process, as it should be. You know, we're all the same way professionally. Like I'm not getting any younger, and yet I know I hate waiting till the last minute to get work done, but I am like the procrastinator guru, and yet I know it. I guess I could say it works because I do get stuff done, but like, it's a terrible feeling. And I'm like, why do I? Oh, it was a problem when I was a kid, and I'm still doing it now, and I know better, you know, but like other people, man, they got to have it chiseled out and they got it lockstep. So I think as you work through some of these stuff is, again, coming back to that space to allow it to ebb and flow, because the kids and the projects and the groups will be at different spaces. And you've got to allow for that too. It can't be, okay, everybody needs to be at this. There's got to be some hard deadlines throughout. There's got to be checkpoints. You got to have a couple non-negotiables about how they get to that checkpoint. You got to let them breathe. So maybe the last thing is, we're talking here too. I'm going to throw this phrase out and then get you guys' response. So I think it's something that we've seen quite a bit. And I'm going to start with the relative joy of creating. So we've seen some of this with creation, you know, and so I say relative because it's not always joyful. What does that statement bring to mind for you guys if we're thinking about this project, or Beth, you've mentioned podcasts. I mean, it doesn't, I mean, there's lots of things that you guys have done prior to just this A project. But what does that statement mean, or how does that resonate with you?
You go first.
I don't know. You know, one of the things that we don't always take enough time to do, and throughout this work, I've noticed we've taken more time to do, is to just celebrate. And to celebrate when things are good, to celebrate when things aren't going well, even to celebrate the mistakes that we make. And that brings us joy, because, oh, okay, here it is. Now we move on. Let's build up from there, right? And so let's reset. We give ourselves permission to do that all the time. But there is that element of fun, right? This should be fun. This should be authentic work is fun, because your kids they know what they're doing is going to matter, and they know what they're doing. It's a sense of accomplishment for them too. Not just a red star on your packet of vocabulary words or whatever it might be.
Well, and their confidence, I think, to this
Totally.
whole last project that we've been working on, we have watched their confidence. And it doesn't matter where they are on a spectrum of a test score or their background or whatever. It flattens the classroom. Absolutely. And I think too, if we come back to the power of play, you walk in here and it is a flat classroom. You can't pick out any certain group or type or whatever. And their confidence, they feel empowered. And again, they feel like we believe in them and that they all can.
And their strengths are highlighted through this process. You know, we have kids that we all have different strengths, but they are proud to share those and to show those. That goes along with that confidence too. I mean, sometimes in a traditional setting, we keep those packed in and we just answer the question and move along. But this work just fosters, and you already said this earlier, so it fosters the chance to fail and be okay. It fosters the risk taking. It helps us see multiple pathways within that process and value those pathways. I mean, we're going to get there differently, but we're going to get there. And again, the collaborative piece is so super important. The conversation between each other and with each other, and the pushback and the willing to question and the willing to disagree. All of those things wrapped up together. I don't know if they always bring us joy, but they're things to celebrate.
Well, add one more piece. The social emotional piece is huge because they learn to rely on each other. They know who they can go to for this, or this. They're coming together as humans.
And in our current situation, right? They haven't had that opportunity in the last couple of years. I mean, we're socially struggling a little bit as a world. And so opportunities like this help bring us back together.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's definitely one of my biggest ahas, kind of being back working with kids again. It's been a while since I've had, I mean, you go in for 1 or 2 days and everything's always fine for that. But this, this daily operation has been really great for me. And then the work that I do, but like 2 of the things that have really just like touched the heartstrings. One, we had a student and been frustrated with trying to figure things out and all those things. And just last week, she made the comment, you know what I like about this project? You guys let us laugh, and we don't get to laugh in learning anywhere else. And I just thought, like, we get so caught up on measurements and all these things. And yes, I know they're important. There's things we got to do. They're out of our control. But that human element, you guys were talking about those celebrations. And I think one of the cool things about, we've been constantly trying to do celebrations as much as we can. Like, it was a good problem to have. We had it just last week. We actually had to like stop a group to get back to their own work, because all 3 of them were individually working with 3 other groups, helping. Like, they organically just had to go help them. Like,
we're not socially struggling.
yeah. But I mean, but that doesn't. It's so hard. It's so hard. We try to like force that collaboration. We try to force feedback, and now we almost have to like steer them back. Like, okay, you got to take care of the old adage, right? Like, where it helps someone else if the plane's going down, you got to put your oxygen mask on first. It's kind of like, hey, you guys got to get your stuff done. Like, we love what you're doing, but it was organic and it was genuine, and so oftentimes, like, when you create the space and the conditions for that, those things develop. and it allows those things to happen. It doesn't have to be a cookie cutter lesson plan and be like, try to force them to see a moment or an idea. It just happens. And so, I mean, those have been some really big aha takeaways that and I think that comes back to what the word you guys said was confidence. They wouldn't do that if they didn't have confidence that they could help. If you don't have confidence, you just kind of stay hidden, you stay in your place, and so I think those are some just really powerful thoughts there. So as we wrap this up here, any final thoughts? What's this? We'll do a roundtable of last little final thought nugget about either to reiterate something that was said or something that hasn't been said that you really want to make sure people don't forget. So final words are always important in any kind of work that we do. So final thoughts or words from
How about you start us off?
Yeah, you start. Go, Aaron.
Well, okay, so I'm going to go with another classic quote, and it's play and learning are like two wings of a butterfly. One can't exist without the other. And that's something we've shared with the students. This idea of play, it's not glorified recess, it's purposeful. The last month, if you were to walk into the library where the work, even though it's disguised as play, or if you didn't actually talk to a kid, you just were to walk through and kind of do a quick observation, you would think kids were just messing around, having fun, like, oh, that's cute. There's some cardboard duct tape. But if you actually go talk to them, it'll completely blow you away with how they make that prototype structure come to life with their words, and how much they really know about what they're doing and how eager they are to share it with the world. And so I think we get so caught up in learning and we squeeze out opportunities for play. I would say play with a purpose. You've got to have both. And we constantly look at engagement, how long it's been since kids have seen other kids in a school where there's hundreds of kids and lots of things going on. We know play helps with anxiety. We know it helps with social emotional. It helps boost creativity. We know hands-on learning. So it's something that doesn't have to be one more thing. It should just be part of what you're doing. It doesn't have to be all the time, but I think that's my final thought nugget, like play, learning, two wings of a butterfly. You can't have one without the other.
That's a perfect
That is
final thought.
perfect. Thank
I
you,
don't know if I
Erin.
can
Yeah.
add anything to that. That's perfect. It's messy, it's hard, it's a struggle, but it's so worth the joy and celebration in the end for our kids.
Yeah.
And your words for your kids, because this isn't
Mhm.
about us. This
Mhm.
is about, I feel like a huge part of our role is to advocate and champion for
Kids.
students. And that's why we're here. That's why
Yep.
we chose this. I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but when we come back to that, it just brings lots of joy.
Yeah, it's like we're choreographers of learning, and it's our job as the educators to pull out the moments that are best for the learning experience. Just like a dance routine, you can have lots of movement, but if it's not choreographed and funneled in just right, it doesn't look nice. And sometimes it's kind of creating those experiences and really kind of capturing when we're onto something, you run with it. And when you're not onto something, you get out of it, you acknowledge it, and you pivot and move on and try again. So this has been incredible. I appreciate you guys taking time to share your insights for what you do. I thank you for all that you do for education and the students. And as people have questions and all that good stuff, feel free to drop it out. We'll have contact information, all that stuff, wherever Comic-Con is going to place it. And we'd love to continue to chat about this stuff because it's what we all love to do. So thank you, Sarah and Beth, both for your time, for joining in on this panel here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Erin.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, thank you. Bye.